Today, I'm pleased to welcome Jaco van Tonder, Advisor Services Director at 91, to our Women in Investing series. An actuary by training, Jaco has spent his career modeling the complexities of retirement planning, balancing the maths with the lived realities of how people spend and save over the long term. Not only does he have technical expertise, but also a deep understanding of the human factors that influence retirement and financial outcomes. Jaco, in today's conversation, we're going to touch on why it is that women face a steeper climb than men when it comes to their retirement. So, say I was a young woman lucky enough to start out in my career today. What is the one golden rule that I should bear in mind when thinking about investing for retirement?
Hi, Quitty. Well, the good news is that actually the rule is the same whether you're male or female. So we all have to remember one rule, and the rule consists of a couple of components and goes as follows. You save 15% of your salary before tax from the very first salary check that you get. Yes, this means in your 20s, when you're scraping by, trying to pay the rent, leaving enough money at the end of the week for a quick drink with your friends, you need to save 15% of even that small salary over a period of 40 years. And if you do so diligently, and you never draw on the capital in your retirement fund, you should have, after 40 years, enough money to basically replace about 75% of your salary. And that's what we deem to be an acceptable retirement. So the key numbers, again, 15% of gross salary before tax for a 40-year period, and don't draw on your retirement fund halfway through. Those are the three simple rules.
But Jaco, why are those early years so important? What is it about those contributions when you're earning next to nothing that matters so much?
It's the power of compound interest, which is what, like most exponential trends in society, people underestimate the back-ended nature of compound interest or exponential curves. And in essence, to make it real for you, if you save for 40 years, and you save even that small salary when you were doing the equivalent of flipping burgers at McDonald's, and you diligently save that away, if we calculate what proportion of your retirement fund benefit comes from that first decade of the 40 years, the first 10 years, if you've diligently stuck to that savings regime, you will be surprised to hear that half of your pension benefit is made up of the contributions you made in your 20s and early 30s, 50%. Wow. So if you skip that, that's the flip side of the argument. If you skip those early savings in your first decade, in your 20s and 30s, you're effectively halving your retirement fund benefit, or you're forcing yourself to work 10 years longer, well into your 60s and 70s.
Or you need to save more than 15%.
Yes, but that is notoriously difficult.
Jaco, so that applies to everyone. Now I want to explore why it is that women often have poorer retirement outcomes than men. What are the reasons for that?
I mean, it's an interesting observation, and it is the unfortunate truth. And there are some societal issues that I think are at play. Females have historically, especially if you look at the cohort of females that are retiring today, if you look at their working career, what the societal issues that were key and were affecting their earnings, many of them had interrupted career progression because they took long times off work to raise kids. And the downside of that is that coincided with them not contributing to their retirement funds during those breaks. Secondly, those breaks meant that their career progression took a bit of a dive. So obviously, if you're not working, you're not getting advancing, you're not getting promotions. So by the time you come back into the working environment, you're earning less than perhaps the males who never left. And so there's a contribution problem. And it's a very real issue. The second societal issue at play here is that, again, for that generation of people who are retiring now, if we look at the interpersonal dynamic in the household around managing the finances, we often have had the males being responsible for managing the finances, whether by virtue of the females often looking after the household. Or, I mean, the dynamic is quite complex, but we know what the outcome was. The outcome was that a disproportionate number of females retiring today were not actively involved in the running of the finances of the household the long-term planning, the saving, the retirement plan, and almost some of those responsibilities got abdicated to the male. And so if they now reach retirement age at a very late stage in their lives, they now suddenly realize that they don't have enough retirement assets. They just didn't know it before.
And then, Jaco, there's another real risk that I think we need to highlight, and that is that women tend to outlive men. And what is that risk?
So it's a significant risk. So even if males and females are the same age, females are expected to live somewhere between 5 and 6 years longer than males in the South African kind of pensioner community, if we look at the South Africa as opposed to international stats, although we follow international trends quite closely. If you couple that with the fact that often in married couples, females are younger than males, if you add that to the extra 5 to 6 years of life expectancy, you're likely to find that if you have 100 couples, in 80% of cases, the female will outlive the male. And that presents a significant financial planning problem for advisors, because when they are dealing with the transitioning of the estate and the female was never involved in the running of the estate, you sit with a very complex and emotionally and financially overwhelming situation facing the surviving spouse, where she not only has to deal with the grief of having lost her partner, but she also has to deal with the complexity all of a sudden of dealing with all the financial decisions, which can be massively overwhelming and actually presents for many financial advisors a very real challenge when advising, especially pensioners in the current cohorts of kind of 60 to 75 years.
So Jaco, let's discuss this principle of taking financial ownership in a bit more detail. For example, someone decides to leave the workforce for a period of 5 to 10 years to take on a caregiving role. What steps can they take to not fall behind practically?
Well, I think the principle is quite simple. Don't disengage from the finances. The fact that you're no longer necessarily earning that or contributing to the household income doesn't mean that you now no longer have to care about the financials of the household. So the first step I would encourage people who find themselves in that position to do is absolutely stay involved in the financials of the household, with the budgeting, the long-term planning, understand what is going on, and understand whether the combined household is on a trajectory for a reasonably safe and doable retirement. So that's the first thing that I would say you must do. The second thing is, if it is at all possible, given the financial situation of the household, continue contributing to some type of retirement vehicle. Don't stop your retirement contributions. Maybe reduce them to compensate for the lower earnings of the household, but don't stop them completely. Stay in that habit of making contributions to some retirement product of some sort, like a retirement annuity, for example, with small increases in the contribution every year to compensate for inflation. Just that small difference can have an outsized impact on your retirement plan 30, 40 years down the line.
So the household, if you will, can pay you a salary with which you can contribute towards your
Exactly. That's the way to think about it.
Yeah. Because you're still doing a job.
Exactly.
Right?
Think about the fact that you're actually still working and you deserve to be paid, and you deserve to do the same things that people who are performing other roles, what they are doing, which is putting money away for it.
Very good suggestion. We can't discuss retirement planning without touching on Two-Pot. It was introduced last year, and it allows members of retirement funds access to a portion of their retirement savings before retirement.
Dangerous.
Risks, alarm bells. Briefly, just touch on the risks of accessing that.
So the way that I always try to explain Two-Pot to people is to say that, remember that the Two-Pot system was not designed really for reasonably wealthy households who already have in place emergency funding, 6 months in a money market fund, who maybe already have a financial advisor who's advising them. Two-Pot was not designed for that household. Two-Pot was designed for households who have no safety net, who go through cycles in the economy where they are jobless for 6 to 12 months at a time, and literally they are dependent on government grants. That part of the working population in South Africa are the people for whom the Two-Pot system was designed, because that savings account access allows them some level of access, but keeps them from taking all of the money. So for that group in the working population in South Africa, two-pot is a good development. For people who have a stable salary, dual income household, reasonable income level, if you look at the total earnings over a year, and who have the ability to build up safety deposits in money market or bank accounts to deal with unexpected emergencies, two-pot is actually not a good idea for them. And so the risk here in the South African environment is that people regularly draw. I mean, the two-pot system allows you effectively to cash in a third of your retirement benefit over your working lifetime. That's the same as contributing only 2/3 of your current contribution towards your retirement. Obviously, the long-term implications can be catastrophic. So we would encourage people to absolutely see their two-pot savings account as the last resort for emergencies when all else has failed, and not something that you dip into every year before Christmas to add a little sparkle to the December holidays.
Thanks, Jaco. This is a complex world. So talk to us about what role a financial advisor can play in helping you, guide you towards a secure retirement.
So financial advisors fulfill, in my view, two very important roles. The first role is that they can help you quantify these long-term exponential trends so that you can get a very clear message on the good habits that you've got to cultivate when you're younger.
The snapshot you gave us now.
Exactly. So advisors are really good at taking people's financial position, chucking it into a spreadsheet, and putting the cold, hard facts on the table for you with kind of in all its glory, so that you can see what the road that you're currently on looks like. So that's the one thing they're good at. The other thing they're also very good at is that most financial advisors are excellent psychologists. And they understand human nature.
Money is emotional.
And they understand the concepts of fear and greed. And they understand those little devils that sit on your shoulder when you're walking through that shopping mall that's trying to get you to spend money that you shouldn't be spending on things that you actually don't need. So they're very good at picking up your behavior risks in that space and bringing that to your attention, and potentially making you adjust your behavior in small little ways over a long period of time, which are typically the behavior changes that have got massive cumulative impact. They're very good at that. They're also particularly good at helping, I think, especially if we look at the female savings journey. I think they're also pretty good at helping females who find themselves in this position where they never were involved in the finances of the household, and now something happens, there's an incident, and their spouse passes away, unfortunately, or suffers some debilitating event or illness, and they need to take charge of the finances. A financial advisor can help smooth that process over for people as well. So I think, if you're younger, maybe you can still wing it, do the spreadsheets or the calcs on a spreadsheet yourself if you're inclined to do those types of things. But I would think that most people, by the time you've got a family with a household with kids and dependents, and you've got to get your will in place and exactly. Yeah. It's a great idea to get a financial advisor to do just a checkup for you before something goes wrong, to tell you, there are some weaknesses in your defenses, there's a couple of things you should be doing. And you start cultivating a relationship, which might not be a critical one when you're 30 or 35, but by the time you reach 50 or 55, that relationship might become much more important.
Thanks, Jaco. That is so important. Final thought, one golden rule, two golden rules, anything you want to leave our viewers with?
I think we touched, for me, the summary of the session today is to understand, as I think, especially as a modern female in today's economy, that it is okay to ask for help. And that's why financial advisors are there. If you're unsure, you're uncertain about key financial decisions, a good financial advisor sees hundreds of people who are in your position throughout their working lifetime, And so they can give you perspective, they can give you ideas. So that would be the first one, is really seriously consider a regular engagement with a financial advisor to give you those kind of hints and checkups. And the second one, which is probably even more important, is never ever in your life, whether you're working, whether you're raising kids, whether you're pursuing a career, no matter what road your life takes, never ever abdicate responsibility for your financial affairs to someone like a partner only. Always stay involved. It's fine if one person takes the lead, but the other person can't abdicate. You absolutely have to stay mentally involved, understand the long-term trajectories, and be in a position where you discuss and make decisions jointly with your partner about the financial future of the household.
Thank you, Jaco. Thank you for sharing your insights. So from my side, if I were to summarize 3 things: start early, stay invested, take ownership. Thank you very much.